Hi there. Today was day 2 of House of the Dragon Season 2's week-long filming schedule in Caceres, Spain, and some really huge spoilers came out. Not so much in terms of the spy photos, we got clearer looks at things, because day 1 was a dry run, a practice run out of costume for the sake of the horses. We got better looks at what these scenes will look like in costume, but they're the same scenes we saw yesterday. The bigger leak was we actually got some substantial, well-cited leaks about the structure of the season as a whole, and what specific episodes these events are happening in. If you watched my preceding video on the events of filming day 1, I said the big question is, well, Battle of Rook's Rest, we knew that was happening, this isn't a change from the books, but we need to figure out cross-referencing directors and cinematographers we see doing it there in Spain. Is this like episode 3 or episode 7 is a huge difference of how much are you adapting. We were all concerned when they said it's down to 8 episodes from 10. Now I said that's because what was a vaguely planned 10 episode season, they expanded into 16 then cut in half. I do still stand by that. Nonetheless, I'm worried they're going through this too fast, and we got these are credible sources through credible channels said these are the episodes these directors are doing in the streets of Caceres right now, and I think it's going too fast. But let me walk you through what happened today. First off, and this is a big update for me, if you saw my 2 videos from yesterday, I said I am terrified, some would say paranoid, of getting copyright strikes from HBO, that they were really tolerant of the spy photos in Season 1, because they wanted to rebuild buzz for this. But when people were posting clips of audition tapes from earlier this year, they sent out copyright strikes. Now, that's a huge difference. Copyright for a audition tape is different from a spy photo. Nonetheless, I got really weirded out. And I said I'm only going to post spy photos if they happen to be reported on by mainstream news channels. I've updated that for what do we consider mainstream. That I said maybe if Spain news channels report on it, like Sky. Now I've decided that Redanian intelligence counts as a mainstream news source. Mainstream news channel, like this really big, really reliable news website for the Witcher franchise on Netflix. That I decided I'm not going to post everything I see on Twitter. But, okay, when it came to the point that Redanian Intelligence was posting this and no one was sending them a takedown notice, I'll repost what they did. And also, when cast members take selfies with fans in the streets of Spain, and they do it out of costume, so what's the harm in that? So I'm going to post some of that too. There were 2 big spy photos today, both from the same shoot, just at different angles. Arguably the same one. I'm just posting 2 separate ones so you get a clearer look. From, as we discussed yesterday, the procession of the dragon Meleys's severed head through the city. This happens in the books, and it's not to be gruesome like Red Wedding style. It's showing off. Like, this is a world without television. We killed one of the enemy's biggest dragons. Come and look at it. This is a big victory for us. So it's kind of a victory parade, and that they're do this procession. They have all these knights decked out in full costume. Yesterday we saw just the horses in the costume, but the cast didn't have to. Now even the extras are wearing full armor. This was a better look at the whole thing. Yesterday this was described to us verbally, you see, but now we have Redanian Intelligence itself posted it, so I'm comfortable posting it. Shots of the blue screen prop head for Meleys on a cart. And you know that she's got this big crown of horns that makes her look regal, that they're all splayed out like that they have just little poles showing you. Some people said this is too small to be her head, and I'm thinking maybe it's just like for eyeline, for perspective, that just needs to be big enough that people get a sense of where it'll look. It'll probably look bigger in post, when they scale up. It's just to give the audience, the crowds of extras, a vague idea of there's a big dragon head here and where to look. That's point 1. Point 2, from the same procession, is the heraldry being carried by some of the knights. That we got a better look at it. Yes, this is even more clearly the golden dragon emblem of Aegon II. I already talked about this at length in the other video, that there's going to be a point where he tells Otto, I'm king, you're not, grandfather, and we're not going to use your thing that you used in the Season 1 finale of a green three-headed dragon. We're using my personal sigil as our faction banner, a gold dragon for Sunfire, my dragon. A lot more prominent. But what we saw in the procession were 4 different banners by different knights from the Crown Lands, from the Rook's Rest campaign, that after Blood and Cheese, Aegon decides we're going to immediately attack and revenge those of the Blacks who are not on islands, but are on the mainland who are nearby that we can attack. So he goes first to Stokeworth and Rosby, then from there to Duskendale, which is a major port, and from there to Rook's Rest, which is where the Blacks make a counterattack with melees, and it's a big battle. We see all 4 of these heraldry pieces here. Some of these originated on Game of Thrones, some didn't, and are the first time we're seeing them in live action. That Stokeworth, we actually saw that in Game of Thrones. Rosby, then we have Darklyn of Duskendale. We saw that that wasn't in Game of Thrones, but it was in House of the Dragon Episode 1 at the tournament, that we saw someone very prominently carrying a Darklyn heraldry. And then, of course, Staunton of Rook's Rest, the checkerboard with the wings, black and white. That actually appeared in House of the Dragon Season 1, but not very prominently. Like, we could tell from set photos it was there, but it was like carried by people in the chaos of the Stepstones battle scene. So there was actually a lot of heraldry in that. Like, the Bar Emmon heraldry was in that fight scene, but it's people running around, so it's hard to see. But that was already established by Season 1. Season 2 will establish for the first time, though, the Rosby heraldry, which is fun because that's never appeared in live action before, which is cool. So this leaves the question of, why are these guys in a procession like this? I think it's, you have a procession of the lords who bent the knee. They're not prisoners. I mean, they're marching there. This happens in the books, so I'm not treating this as a plot hole, that frequently when you bend the knee, you then have to contribute your surviving armies and levies to the enemy. That when you surrender, you're not just knocked out of the war, your survivors switch sides. This happened in real life, so it's not like a criticism. This happens in the books a lot, that technically the oddness of that Roose Bolton leading the survivors of the Red Wedding up through Moat Cailin, when you killed most of their men, these are just the survivors who you caught as political prisoners or something, or when the Freys switch sides and things, that when people, the Reach Lords who held out, or Stannis' men in the Stormlands, that when you defeat someone and they surrender, their armies switch to your side, what's left of them. But that's in the books, that's a real thing, that sometimes it's just you bend the knee and switch sides. That actually will be a plot point coming up, of then Rhaenyra's whole thing when the tide of war changes. What are we going to do with the ones who actively switched sides to save their own lives? That some of these lords will go, well, I had no choice. Some remain defiant to the end and got executed for it. And others are like, well, what choice did I have but to surrender? And do you have an amnesty? What do you do? That's a big moral question of what do you do? I hope they keep that in, because it's a big question of the politics of war and all of this. But that they will actually include, what are we doing with the minor houses? That gives me a hint that this isn't being streamlined, that if this was truly gutting the story, they wouldn't leave in, what do we do with the Rosbys and Stokeworths? You know? So we'll see where that goes, but that part of the procession are the defeated houses. Sometimes you rise up a rival heir, though. Sometimes you go, well, here's the Karstark rival heir who's not Alice. Sometimes the Lord himself goes, I bend the knee and I'll put my men on your side. All that's just reading into what's basically one shot. Just one has a better shot of the head, one a better of the banners. Those are the physical images we saw today from filming. Last thing we saw, in terms of shots, was just cast members taking selfies with fans. We saw Fia Saban, who's Helena Targaryen, taking photos with multiple people. With _ Jane Poole _, that's their screen name. We saw her taking those. And same person also took selfies with Luke Tittenzor, who's one of the Cargyle twins, and Freddie Fox, who's going to be Gwaine Hightower, Alicent's brother. And then Fia Saban again posted a different selfie with a fan whose screen name here is Magi2296. So the cast members are out and about in Spain. They take selfies with fans. That's nice. For the sake of brevity, because I'm hitting on the 10-minute mark here, I'm going to cut this in half. That this video was on the photos we saw today, and that, wow, they're actually keeping the lower level houses as part of the what do we do with the Crownlanders who surrendered. Next, I'm going to talk about the big leak we have, which I consider pretty substantiated but deeply troubling. I'm going to split that off into another video. I'm going to post these at the same time. Please follow me after the jump.